cameras. All right, Gerald Undone put out a really relevant video about whether or not camera events are fair, worth it.
Yeah, it's really controversial. He's kind of turning the industry on end by making us question this really basic thing where camera companies fly out all the reviewers to some gorgeous location, put unreleased cameras in their hand and set up shoots for them.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about this here and there throughout our podcast, but I love that he just compiled the whole idea into one video. So we want to talk about our experience as well. We agree with some of the things we said. I wouldn't say we disagree, we have different views.
No, I flat out disagree with him on some things.
Dang.
No,
well,
I'll take issue with it.
Okay. All right, let's get into when we think the events are helpful, when they're not.
Yeah, we're gonna ask two questions. Do camera events produce biased reviews? And are they even valuable? Like, are they good for the consumer? But first, we want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace.
Yeah, you know what's great for the consumer? Having your own website where you don't have ads for other companies, you don't have someone using your information from your photos to create AI art. You get to control how your potential client sees your work, you get to show them your best work first, and even sell prints. So if you're interested in trying it, it's really fun. 14 days for free. You don't have to remember to cancel. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea. And when you want to use it, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. That's CHELSEA, like the football club.
Okay, little European reference there. So first question, do events create biased reviews?
Here's another question for you. What doesn't create a biased review?
Well, it's a good question because there are so many elements to bias, right? But clearly, flying somebody out to Hawaii and putting a really cool piece of tech in their hand and offering them the opportunity to get hundreds of thousands of views when that might not be normal for them, that could be incentive to maybe glow a little bit more about a piece of gear than they otherwise would be inclined to, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. And actually, I'm really lucky enough to have a good friend, Michael the Maven. He's also a camera reviewer. And he called me one day and he was like, hey, I want you to know that the FTC qualifies these trips as payment, and you therefore have to disclose that they flew you there. And like, oh shoot, I didn't know that, Michael. Thanks for keeping me in line. He's like, I know you would want to know.
For the record, I did know that. We'd always disclosed, Sony brought us to this place.
Yeah, but
not everybody does.
I didn't realize that was something we had to do. I was always just doing it because it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So that is something that has to be disclosed, that there is an exchange going on. They're paying for your hotel or your flight, and you're making a video.
And that law exists because that introduces the potential for bias, right? Like the reviewer is receiving something of value, and thus it maybe not technically a review anymore, depending on how they might be influenced. But I think it depends on the individual. Like 30-year-old Tony, who didn't have too much money and couldn't really travel anywhere, I would have been pretty excited to be flown around the world. 50-year-old Tony, sitting here, I'd rather make my own travel plans. I'm not that eager.
I don't believe you, because our first Sony trip, we were so hard up for money because we had put all of our money into our books and all of our money into our channel, and they flew us down to Miami where we met like Chris and Jordan and all these people from magazines, and we were still very critical of the camera.
Oh yeah, that's the one that overheated in my hand.
Yeah.
And we just talked about it. We also said, probably not getting invited to any future events, but we just have to do this.
Yeah.
But it's going to impact different people differently. And you watching this might think a trip around the world would be huge incentive to lie about the performance of a piece of gear. But again, that's going to depend on who it is, both based on their ethics, but also maybe their place in life, because the value of the trip, well, Gerald in his video said, camera events cost me money. They don't make me money.
Yeah, they cost
the same
money.
For us. They cover our plane tickets and our airfare, but we have a lot of expenses. There's missed work, there's dog sitters, and all these other things that the net result is always a negative for us.
Yeah, but there are the intangibles. Even if it's costing you money, it is validating you, which is extremely important to a lot of people. And
like, you've made it.
Yeah, no.
Camera companies flying you around.
It's exciting to have somebody tell you you are worthy of being sent somewhere like that. So I think that also can introduce some bias. You want to feel like you belong, and it can be really valuable, especially when you're first starting, to have somebody do that for you, because now your audience is looking at your videos and saying, oh, like, they're big time. People are trusting them in the industry.
I also want to ask if getting early access to cameras, whether through an event or not, is valuable enough that it might cause people to make a more positive review. Because you get early access to a camera, that means you have a video out on launch. If you launch a video 2 months later, it's almost certainly not going to get as many views. More views equals more money, and thus you probably want to keep getting that early access gear, which means you might want the video to be positive to make sure that they send it to you next time.
Yeah, I think that that cycle exists, especially in the beginning. The way that the press events used to work is that they would send you out, and oftentimes it didn't leak what was being released, so it was actually a secret. And then the embargo, that when you're able to actually talk about it, would be several days after you've used the product. So that means that you could potentially get a review out at the time that everyone else is finding out about the camera. And that was so invaluable because, you know, the first articles are being written and you're there actually using it. But now it seems like things are different. It seems like everything leaks really early, and you can get a ton of views from just talking about the leaks. And by the time you're at the event, the embargo is up and you barely have time to post a video.
Yeah.
So I think that the early access depends. Though I have noticed that the audience finds value in it, because when we're not invited, they're like, guess you don't get to do this. Like, guess you don't get to review the camera, not realizing you still get to review it. You just have to wait.
Yeah, exactly. I think getting loaner equipment actually has a lot of value to smaller channels. So you can be on the list where you can get loaners or not. Like Fuji refuses to loan us gear anymore. But if we want to review a Fuji camera, we're a big channel. We have a budget for buying gear. We'll buy it, test it, sell it off to KEH. So getting off the loaner list does not really impact the production of our videos. But a smaller channel that didn't have the budget to buy gear like that, it means they either make a video or they don't. If they don't make a video, they don't get any views for it.
Yeah, I will say if you're a smaller channel struggling with the financial part of getting gear, you can reach out to your audience and borrow it. And we've done that recently. What was it, the Z9?
Oh,
We
yeah.
didn't get a Z9, but there was a guy up in Mass that got one before we could get one. And he came and met us and let us review his gear. So it doesn't have to keep you from making reviews, but it definitely makes life easier if they're just giving you stuff.
Here's another thing that makes it hard to make a critical review at an event. You get to like meet and shake the hands of the very nice engineers who designed the features that you're about to rip apart in your YouTube video.
Yeah, or the marketing people who are like the most personable, charismatic people you've ever met in your life. That
Remember
part's hard.
the Z6, Z7 launch? We like met the engineers and then we tested it, and those cameras were not ready at that time. And we knew we had to say it, but I kept thinking of meeting them, and they were so nice and they were so proud, and it just wasn't ready. They did good, it just wasn't ready. And that was really hard. And I definitely felt internal emotional resistance to being brutally honest. And we did it, we were brutally honest, but it hurt. And not
It
everybody's
hurt.
going to be strong enough to push through that pain.
And the Nikon people are so nice.
Yeah.
I cannot stress, like, the people you meet there are just talented and kind and generous, and then you have to complain about something. I just keep all of you in mind. I'm like, think about Erland. I just think of all the people I've met through this. I'm like, think about Kyle Wolf.
Yeah, think about the people who work for months to save up enough money
Yeah.
to buy this camera or this lens. Those are the people that we are indebted to, not the multi-billion-dollar international corporations. Gerald brought up repeatedly the question, if you make a bad review from a press event, will you get banned from future press events?
It depends.
Yeah, it's not the same answer for every company,
It's
right?
not the same answer for every person or every company. And I don't think everyone gets banned for the same reason. I mean, people have been banned temporarily for accidentally leaking something before it's time to talk about it. They violate the NDA. People have been banned, what I imagine is because the review wasn't good. They never tell you. It's not like they say, your review was bad and now you're banned. But you see that someone made a review that wasn't great and they're not coming back. And sometimes you get unbanned and you get to come back and they test you out again.
But the answer, will you get banned for making a bad review? Definitely, sometimes, yes. Some companies will ban you right away. Like, your review needs to be glowing, but with a couple mild criticisms to make it seem balanced, or you're banned. This is true of some companies.
Yeah, I think every company.
But it's not
has
true of
limit.
Panasonic, which
No.
Gerald is really singling out. That's not my experience with Panasonic. Like, I'm the guy who made the Is Micro Four Thirds Dead video. And
Yeah.
they just keep...
Oh yeah, we were
offer-
invited to
yeah.
Japan, but we had a scheduling conflict. But yeah, I think that some of them are more open to the criticism. I think Sony, I have a lot of respect for them because we've been very critical of them and they keep having us back.
Yeah, they just keep fixing our criticisms and making the next camera.
We try to be fair with our criticism. I'm not going to say that we're always right, or you can't be right all the time.
No, but we correct our mistakes.
Yeah,
we reach out ahead of time to try to figure out what's wrong. Like, we have a methodology that we think is fair.
But the simple answer is yes, you could get banned.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. It's a valid fear.
If you're very afraid of getting banned, then I could see how that could kind of keep you in line. But from my experience, it's not that bad. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
You can still make stuff.
What about this idea that, okay, so-and-so got banned, and now they're making a critical review because they want revenge, because their feelings were hurt? It's possible, right?
Yeah, it's possible.
We've been accused of this a lot, but
I just talk about getting banned. It's like a little badge of honor. I don't get revenge. I'm going to be fair still, but I will tell you that I'm banned. Because I think if you get banned for being honest, like, okay, I might not have the first review on that camera, but when I do, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need revenge. I just will continue to say what I want to say. And then whatever happens, happens.
But humans have feelings, egos can be hurt, and it can be a challenge to completely separate that. And some people are going to be better at that than others. So yeah, some people, maybe they get banned and they have negative feelings and thus they focus on the negative. Some people, maybe they're able to keep those feelings in check.
I kind of appreciate the revenge people because maybe they're making people second guess banning. They're like, oh, they're like sizing the person up. Like, are they going to get their ego bruised and go crazy?
There's definitely a thing where camera manufacturers sort of cherry pick who they're going to invite to events. I won't say all the camera manufacturers do that, but you might be more inclined to pick the ones that are going to make a positive review, that you feel confident will make a positive review, because after all, the events are funded with marketing dollars. Like, they used to advertise in magazines. They took that budget. Now they get hotel rooms and fancy venues to do a photo shoot, right? Like, it is designed to turn a profit by getting positive messages out to potential camera buyers.
I mean, that's how I would do it. If I were going to send one of our products to reviewers, I wouldn't be sending it to like the hardest to please, grumpiest, mean people.
Yeah.
So it makes total sense. But yeah, they often cherry pick for practical reasons too. If they have out gear that's going to be good for wildlife, they're going to choose people from wildlife channels. They're not going to choose someone who does portraits or landscape. So it makes some sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to answer the next question, which is it actually good for reviews? Like, do events make better or worse reviews for you? Should you watch the reviews that take place at events or just skip them and wait for the production stuff? But first, we want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace.
Yeah, whether you want your own website or store or portfolio, you can make it happen with Squarespace. And it's super easy to make your own, but it also looks professional and you have control over everything that your potential clients are seeing. So they're going to see your best work first. They're going to be able to see your stores and your gallery and your print. You can even set up a place where they can book appointments so you can stay organized. You can have them sign their contracts. It's really a one-stop shop for anything you can imagine you need for your business. So check it out and try it at squarespace.com/Chelsea. And when you want one, I know you will, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off.
Thanks for sponsoring us for 10 years now, Squarespace.
It's been 10 years.
So do events make for bad reviews from the consumer's point of view?
I actually think they can help create better reviews. And here's why. Even considering all the bias that can be introduced, when they set up a press event, it's not just about one individual going there and making a review. They're sending all of the experts in the field to one place to talk. And sometimes they're joking around and having a good time. Mm-hmm. But in my experience, a lot of the time they're putting their heads together and they're talking about the tech and what can be better and how to test it and how to figure out if something works. And I've found that it's been a collaborative effort when specific people get together.
It also gives the manufacturers the opportunity to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into setting up a scenario where you can properly test what that camera is supposed to be good at. So Sony A9 Mark III event is a good example of this. They went there and they had $60,000 Pro Photo strobes that would show off its 1/80,000 sync speed. They rented out all of Chelsea Piers, like a huge athletic thing, so that they could have basketball players, boxers,
volleyball, boxers, karate, like
and
everything.
If they had just sent the camera to me at my house, maybe I could have gotten...
I could have done karate.
But we probably would have just had you walking in the backyard to test the autofocus, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been nearly as diverse or thorough of a test. So for that particular camera, especially the fact that they could pour a whole bunch of budget and then have all the reviewers sharing those resources allowed us to produce a better review, I think.
Yeah, and that sounds like the deck would always be stacked in the manufacturer's favor, except I remember a time when we did a sports shoot, and because it was in a real stadium, one of the reviewers uncovered a problem with the camera. And so it's not always working in their favor. It's often just giving people the opportunity to take pictures that they wouldn't be able to take, especially when there are reviewers that live in a city and then they need to review wildlife or something like that, or someone that doesn't typically do portraits. So yeah, I think it can make better reviews.
But you make a valid point. There's the opportunity for it to make it a worse review if the manufacturer sort of stacks the deck a little bit, right? Like we were brought to an event and asked to test the autofocus of a camera, and the subject they gave us was moving just side to side, where the autofocus system is not being taxed. It's taxed when something is coming towards us. We did an indoor sports shoot where it was a regular indoor stadium, but they set up huge banks of lights that added, I don't know, 5-6 stops of light over what would have normally been there. And that definitely makes it easier for the camera to autofocus. And it was not necessary. And it kind of makes me think they brought the lights in to improve the results from the camera, even though it was a less realistic scenario. There's definitely that opportunity there.
Right, that's true.
But on the upside, you get personalized training. You will often have an expert there who shows you how to get the most out of the camera. And I know this is a valuable part of an event because when we review a camera or lens without that personalized training, I've made mistakes. Like I've tested something and said, hey, this doesn't seem to work, and then realized maybe even only after I published the video that there is some like obscure hidden setting that I needed to go in and change to optimize it. But without that personalized training, there's not necessarily any way for me to get the optimal results from the gear.
Yeah, and not just personalized training with the gear, but personalized subject matter experts. We've had National Geographic award-winning photographers there. We've had Pulitzer Prize-winning photographers that will, they're really generous with their knowledge. If you watch them or ask questions, they're going to tell you how to be a better photographer. So they're actually making people in the industry more knowledgeable, more well-rounded while they're reviewing their gear a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. You also get expert, like immediate troubleshooting. If something doesn't work at an event, I can lean over and be like, hey, Bill, this isn't working. And then Bill can go in and change a setting and be like, try it now. Mm-hmm. Like when we first reviewed the XT1 back in the day, the autofocus absolutely sucked. And I didn't have a contact at Fuji at the time, but it turns out the problem was the default is in power saving mode. And you had to put it into like turbo mode. It was very obscure, poorly labeled, but
I just think
a Fuji troubleshooter would have fixed that problem before we published the review.
Yeah, it's also just a valid complaint in itself that a lot of that stuff happens. Like you have to have on 3 settings to make another one work or something.
Well, yeah, they are unintuitive, but that's why they need somebody there like helping you troubleshoot stuff. In our reviews now, when we bought the Nikon Z9, we had lots of problems with it. And every time I would test it and then I would have to write email to my contact at Nikon, and sometimes they get back and sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they'd have helpful information and sometimes they wouldn't. But it would add like a week to our production schedule.
Yeah.
And honestly, not everybody does that. Like we're pretty rigorous with trying to contact the manufacturer with every problem, but some people just publish it as is.
Yeah, but also if they don't have an answer, sometimes because they're not in front of you, they just never answer. So you're waiting on an email. It's like, I got to publish this thing. Are you going to answer or not? Because I have to put it out.
But those things make events really valuable. And
Right.
I honestly believe, here's where I disagree with Gerald, those factors make press events valuable and allow us to produce better reviews like for the consumer. Because we get that expert training, that expert troubleshooting, because we have specialized scenarios that we couldn't set up as independent reviewers. But there are some downsides to it, right? There are ways that events can make very bad reviews. And one of them is that you usually have pre-production gear. Even if it's the final production copy, if something goes wrong over and over again, the manufacturer will say, that problem is because you're using a hand-built pre-production camera. Our production cameras will not experience that.
Yeah, and that's frustrating because imagine, taking time off and going all the way to this place and you want to report on what the pictures look like, something goes wrong, and they just say, that'll be fixed later. Well, it's like, well, then what do I do? What am I doing here? How am I going to report on this piece of equipment if it's not finished yet?
This happens all the time. Everything that the camera does right, the reviewer says it's great at these things. And when something breaks, they say, well, this didn't work, but maybe it's because it's pre-production. And as a result, you end up with a review that leans heavily towards the positive, because anything that failed can be dismissed, even though that will almost certainly persist to the production equipment. There's very rarely any differences.
This is one of the things that actually made us stop going to press events in 2019.
Yeah.
Is that we were like, we can't even make a review from this anymore because everything's pre-production.
And it can be screwed up. Like, we got pre-production Canon R5, and it overheated like crazy, like wild. And we published our review, everybody did. But then by the time they were shipping the cameras, they had updated the firmware based on our feedback. They solved the problem. And then people were getting them and they're like, why are you complaining about the overheating? It doesn't overheat. It's like, thank you, you're welcome. I complained about it, they fixed it. But what was the point of me making, we ended up making a negative review about a camera that ended up being good because they gave us a beta product. I don't want beta products anymore.
Yeah, like you don't want to be a free consultant and then look like a jerk later.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, that's happened before too, where like the first version of a camera, you put out the review and it is actually bad, but then they fix everything with software, which is excellent.
Yeah, like the Z9.
It's excellent, but makes your review look pretty silly. So what do you think hearing all of this? There are definitely pros and cons to these events, but do you think that they're overall helpful? Would you want us to go to more? Say no.
Yeah, do you want us to go to events, or do you want us to wait until something is production and just buy it with our own money? Like, are you willing to wait? Sometimes it's 6 months between the time they give the pre-production copies to reviewers and the time that they actually ship them. Are you willing to wait to get a review that was not based on an event?
Well, here's some of the bias that you're making me realize. There's some people that just buy something as soon as it comes out.
Yeah.
And you miss on those affiliate sales if you're somebody that's making money from affiliate links.
Right.
You know you have to be the first one to have them out because some people just want to buy the new thing as soon as they can.
Well, some people are going to pre-order, and do they not deserve the best possible reviews? Because the events are going to happen one way or another.
Right.
Like, if we don't go, somebody else is going to take our spot, and maybe that person won't make as thorough or as critical or as balanced.
Maybe they'll be better.
Maybe they will. Not
Cuter.
likely. I mean, you're talking about us here.
Maybe they'll be cuter, better. Yeah, no, it's going to happen either way. But we'd like to hear your thoughts. Thanks, Gerald, for sparking a bigger conversation. It's definitely something that needs to be talked about. And thank you, Squarespace, for making this podcast possible. If you want your very own Squarespace website, what are you waiting for? It's free. There's no risk. You don't have to remember to cancel. You just go there and see if you like it. And you will. It's so much fun to make one. It makes your work look even better.
Yeah, start by visiting squarespace.com/Chelsea. And if you love it, the coupon code Chelsea will get you 10% off. Don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials, lots of camera reviews, of course, the breaking news, and so much more. Bye.